Right, the next step is going to be to put this front cover title onto the spine as well. So to do this, I'm not going to bother going over to my text tool and creating a new text box and trying to add all the effects and change the font and do everything else. All I'm going to do is I'm going to try and duplicate this layer, rotate it, and make sure all my text is on one line. This is much easier to do as long as you follow these steps. So, move tool, selected, click auto select and show transform controls, make sure your boxes are ticked. And then what we're going to need to do is just duplicate this layer. Now there's a really good shortcut to do this. That shortcut is Control J. Now if I press Control J together, there we go. I've now got Sonic Surf and I have a Sonic Surf copy. Now this copy is directly over the top of it. Now to move this out of the way, I need to click on the actual letter, okay, which is actually part of the layer, and I need to click and drag and move it over. Now that that's moved over, all I'm going to have to do is to make sure my text is on one line, because at the moment I'd have to shrink it down far too much. So I'm going to need to go back into my edit options, and the same way we went back into rename or reword your title. So I'm going to double click on the T and I'm back into my text options. So I pressed enter to put this onto a new line last time. So I'm going to press backspace and that sent it back to the same layer, well, same line. But when I press spacebar to try and make them spaced, it's just putting it back onto the second line. So what I'm going to need to do is actually drag this box and make it longer. Once I've done that, you can see it's now onto a new line. If I press enter again, it will still go back onto that second line, but now when I press backspace, it's all in one line. Now that I'm happy with it, I can go back to my move tool. What happens from here is I'm going to have to rotate it round and shrink it down. Now I can do both of these things by holding down the shift key. So I'm going to go to my move tool, hold shift, and now when I drag from the corner, I can shrink down the size. Now if I go over to a corner and get this nice little arrow that points in two different directions and has a slight curve in between it, and now still holding shift, hold my click and rotate, it will do it every 15 degrees, which is perfect because I need it 90. If you still need to adjust the size, hold shift, maybe make it slightly larger or slightly smaller, totally up to you. Now, because I've just made this transformation, I'm still going to have to double click. Now that I've double clicked, you'll see that my text is now in position and on the side. And again, I can make any fine adjustments by using the arrow keys to move it around. Now, the one thing that's gone wrong for me here, and may have done for you if you've got a gradient on your text, is you're now going to have to go and adjust your gradient. To do that, I'm just going to double click on my effects again, which is the space on the layer, and I'm going to go back to my gradient overlay and I'm just going to change the angle. I'm going to change the angle until it matches more of what's on the title, and I quite like it like that, to be honest. I think that's good. So I'm now going to hit OK. And that's that. Make sure you get your title onto the spine.